To set a sleeve into a garment, you will need to have the shoulder seam machined and the underarm seam and the overlocking done. Whether it's a closed seam or an open seam will depend on the thickness of your fabric. And then you will also need to have the seam of the sleeve machined through as well. At the head of the sleeve, I have machined around a row of long stitching. I've lengthened the stitch on my machine, and this will be then pulled just very gently up and then eased back out again, so that the sleeve head now rolls instead of being a flat piece of fabric. And then I'm ready to set my sleeve into the armhole. You will notice there is a nick or a notch at the top of the sleeve, and that will match the shoulder line. There is a front and a back of the sleeve, so you'll make sure that you get the left sleeve in the right armhole and not get the sleeve set in back to front. I'm going to match the shoulder point and then go down to the underarm and match that seam. Then I'm going to work in the areas in between. You may put the pins in like so, or if you prefer, the pins can go in that direction. It's just a personal choice which way those pins go as you would like to sew. This sleeve has a little bit of easing in it, which I have to control as I machine around. I might just pull that just a fraction more so that it's sitting flat. We don't want actual gathers in this head of sleeve. It's an eased head, and we'll need to sit fairly flat as you have it pinned in. You'll notice I'm making sure that I keep the raw edges of the sleeve and the garment together. I must say that I prefer to put my pins that way, but others will recommend that way and sewing over the pins. The choice is up to you. Then you're ready, when you're happy with the sitting of that, you're ready to commence machining. And commence machining at the underarm. The seam allowance on this particular pattern is 1.5. Just a little back stitch. And then I'm going to very carefully work around that armhole, just sewing a small amount at a time. And when I come up to where I have that row of machining, I'm going to sew to the left hand side of it, so that machining will not show. And you'll notice I've got this pin in the horizontal position. I can actually work the wheel over that and continue machining. I just like to work the wheel by hand so that I don't hit the pin and break the needle. Make sure when you get to the shoulder line that the seam sits flat if it's pressed one direction, or if it's open, not to get anything twisted. And then I'm back to where I started, a little back tack, trim your threads, and then just turn your sleeve over and just check that you're happy with it. and you've not got any puckers that you don't want in the head of the sleeve. When you're happy with that, there may be a couple of threads from that easing thread to trim off. You will then need to go to the overlocker and overlock those turnings together. When you overlock from the garment side, because the sleeve, actually the turnings push into the sleeve, so you'll see the right side of the overlocking, whereas when you machine the sleeve in, you machine from the sleeve side. And then when that's overlocked right round, a light press and you have completed your set-in sleeve. In the commercial pattern, you will notice that they do 2 rows of gathering stitch around the head of the sleeve, and that's an option. I only did 1, but 2 rows is quite acceptable. You do what you feel comfortable with, but most commercial patterns will show 2 rows of easing.